Most of the time, when we try to change something significant in our lives, it lasts a few days at best. And the main reason this happens is because people tend to oversimplify the change process. We often think of it like it's just a two-step process. Step one, decide to change. Step two, change. If this is what you believe, and this is how you practice your attempts at behavioral change, you are putting yourself in unwinnable situations and unknowingly setting yourself up for failure. In our study of human habits and behaviors, we've discovered that change is a multi-step process and that each step in the process needs different types of support and interventions in order to help the person progress to the next step. If you don't get what you need at each step of the change process, you either get stuck at that step, best case scenario, or worst case scenario, you fall backwards and revert to a previous step. Now, something I want you to keep in mind as we review these steps and what a person needs from these steps is that this information is useful in two settings. This is good information to have if you're a support person and if you're trying to help somebody else make a change. This can give you information about how you can react to that person to best support them. That's not necessarily the main takeaway that I hope you get from today's video, though, because this is also information you can use to help yourself. When you are in a change process, the majority of the feedback that you receive comes from you. You will hear your own judgment of your change process more than you will hear the judgment of everybody else in your life combined by a wide margin. So as you're listening to today's content, please think about how you can apply this to your own inner dialogue when you are working on some kind of change, whether that's trying to get yourself to do something you had a hard time initiating or trying to stop yourself from doing something that you think is harmful to you. So as we walk through Prochaska and DiClementi's 5 stages of behavioral change, I'm also going to give an example for each stage. The example I'm going to give is overspending. So if someone was struggling with overspending, here's how that might look at each of these 5 stages and what a person might be able to do to help them move through each of the 5 stages. The first stage of change is what is called pre-contemplation. If a person is in pre-contemplation with regard to a behavior change, that means they either do not yet realize that they have a problem or they are in some level of denial about the problem. They maybe do realize it deep down inside, but they're not emotionally ready to really even face it for themselves yet, let alone admit or acknowledge it to another person. And so what a person who is in pre-contemplation needs is awareness. They need to gradually develop awareness that they have a problem that is worth looking at. And the best way that you can help them or you develop that awareness is through genuine concern and questions rather than shame and judgment. If you think somebody has a problem and they're not ready to admit that they have a problem, and you just come at it head on and you say, you have a problem, you need to do this, or you need to stop doing this, they are just going to dig in even harder. It will be met with nothing but resistance and denial. A really good way to navigate around people's resistance and behavioral change is to use questions rather than statements. And I will acknowledge it can feel a little manipulative to do this, but questions are a great way of getting around a person's defensiveness and getting to the heart of the matter. So for example, if I struggle with overspending and I am in pre-contemplation, what you would hear from me if I'm talking about finances is a lot of rationalizing and justifying. So I might be saying things like, everybody's in debt right now. The economy's terrible. Like I'm just like everybody else. There's not a specific me problem happening here, right? And a way that I might respond to something like that if I heard it in a therapy session or heard it from someone I care about is start with validation and get into question. So I might say something like, the economy is terrible, because there's usually a kernel of truth to those rationalizations, right? The economy is terrible right now. It's ridiculous. Like no one is thriving, hardly, right now. Within that reality, does not changing your spending habits during a terrible economy make you feel more or less stressed about finances? So you can kind of see what I did there. Like, it's obviously somewhat of a leading. I already know the answer to this question. Of course, it makes you more stressed. But if I just say, well, then stop spending so much money, dude. Like, if the economy sucks, spend less. That's a solution. Someone in pre-contemplation isn't ready to hear a solution because they haven't acknowledged that they have a problem yet. So you need to gently, and it's hard, it's frustrating when you see it clear as day, gently raise their awareness level of the problem. The second stage of the stages of change model is what's called contemplation. When a person is in contemplation, they are aware that they have a problem. They have at least acknowledged it to themselves. They may even be ready to acknowledge it to other people, but they are not yet sure if they are willing to change. They're still trying to decide, is this something I am actually willing to work on or to let go of? So what a person needs when they're in contemplation is they need motivation. They need to believe that this is something worth doing and that they could do. And usually you can get that through support, installation of hope, sometimes even examples. You got to be a little careful with examples, because if you say like, oh, I struggled with that too, and I got through it and I'm okay now. And if in the course of talking to this person, if it becomes apparent to them that the thing you struggled with isn't actually that much like the thing they're struggling with, it's going to backfire. So examples can be helpful, but you got to be really careful here. So going back to the spending example, if I'm in contemplation with my overspending, you might hear me say something like, I know I spend more than I should. See, there's the acknowledgement, but shopping is the only way I can recover from the stress of my job. So I'm acknowledging and admitting the problem, but I'm still not sure if I'm ready to change it. There's a part of me that wants to hold on to this really badly. And the way I might respond to something like that is, I know your job is extremely stressful and you absolutely deserve to feel relief from that. Do you know anyone who copes effectively with a stressful job using methods other than shopping? So again, I'm using questions to navigate around defensiveness. I'm not just coming at them head on. I'm not just telling them that they're wrong, because that's not what they need here. They need encouragement. They need hope. They need support. And I'm trying to come alongside them and say, yeah, let's look at this together. You have some needs that are being met by this thing, but it's maybe not the best way to meet them. Let's see if we can figure something else out instead. The third stage of change is what is called preparation. When a person is in preparation, they've not only acknowledged that they have something they would like to change, they have decided that they are going to try to change it. So the ambivalence of like letting go or starting the thing is gone. They're definitely going to do it. What they're lacking here is they don't know how. Like, I don't know how to stop spending too much money. I want to, but I don't know what to do. And so when a person is in the preparation stage, they need strategy. They need information. They need ideas. This is when they need someone to come up and say like, hey, let's try XYZ solution, right? They need a game plan. And so if I'm in preparation with my overspending, I might say something like, I've got to get my spending under control. It is a problem and I need to work on it. But no one's ever taught me how to manage money. Like, I literally don't know how to do this. That's my barrier right now. And how I might respond to a person who says something like that is, I mean, there's, tons, right? Depends on the situation. Let me give you the number of my accountant, or here's the budgeting software I use. Or, when I'm really stressed out and I have an urge to spend, I have this text document on my phone of other things besides shopping that help me calm down. And I try to look at that every time I feel the urge to shop and pick 2 or 3 things from that list instead. So this is where you really get to give the person ideas, which is something that a lot of people jump to this too early. And as soon as they think someone has a problem, they say, here's what you should do about it. If you apply that to someone who's in pre-contemplation or contemplation, it won't work. But if you give that to someone in preparation, it's going to work really well because that's what they need. The fourth stage is action. Action is when this change process has begun. I am increasing or decreasing the behavior, but it's fairly new. And it still feels challenging. It feels uncomfortable. It feels unsteady. I'm maybe not sure if I can keep doing it. And so the biggest thing that a person in the action stage is lacking is confidence. They don't know if this is a change they can stick with long term. And you get confidence mainly from repetition more than anything else. Like, the longer you do this thing or don't do this thing, the more confident you will become. Along the way, things like validation and acknowledgement and encouragement really go a long way to helping the person in action. If I'm in action with my excessive spending, you might hear me say something like, it's been a week. I haven't shopped impulsively in a week, but it has been so hard. I'm fighting urges constantly, and I don't know if I can do this like indefinitely. I feel like any day I could lose the battle. So I'm insecure. I'm nervous about this change I'm making. And how I might respond to a person who says something like that is, I just want you to know you're doing a great job. The first week is usually the hardest. That's when the urges are typically the strongest. And the same strategies that you've been using so far that have carried you through this first week are probably going to continue to work for you. I know it's scary, but I really believe that if you stick to the plan, you will be able to do this, and the intensity of those urges is going to decrease over time. And the fifth and final stage, according to the Prochaska and DiClemente stages of change model, is maintenance. Maintenance is when the change basically has been achieved, but we want to make sure it stays that way. This is actually a really dangerous stage. It probably doesn't seem like it. It's the final stage. Like, so it's the goal, it's the end game, but you're actually not done when you're in maintenance. What a person needs when they're in maintenance is to avoid complacency. And if you're in like pre-contemplation, contemplation, or preparation with the change you're trying to make, what I'm about to say is going to sound kind of ridiculous and insensitive, but I promise you it's a real thing. When you've been in maintenance with a change for a long time, to some degree, you actually kind of forget how bad it was when you had the problem. And that becomes an issue because questions and doubt start creeping in. You've gained a little bit of confidence, you've got some distance from this problem, and pretty much inevitably, I would say 90+% of the time, at some point your brain's going to ask the question, maybe we could re-enter that world. Maybe we could do that again. Maybe I could turn on one-click shopping on Amazon again. Maybe I could drink on occasion. Maybe it would be okay if I went on this diet. You know, whatever the addiction that you were struggling with is, you start to think, could I integrate that back into my life to some degree, right? Could I have a healthy relationship with this thing that I've never had a healthy relationship with before? And this is where I see people often start to backslide. When you're in maintenance, do not let yourself get complacent. It is so important that you remember why you made this change, that you remember why you worked so hard to get to this place, that you remember how bad things were going before you started to really work on this, and that you do not let yourself slip up. Because your work is not done when you're in maintenance. If you've struggled with addiction or mental illness, pessimistic statement coming, but you need to hear it, your work is never going to be done. It hopefully gets a lot easier the longer you do it, but it's never going to be complete. There's always going to be at least a little bit, hopefully very little, but a little bit of a battle that you're going to have to fight regularly with this thing. Do not rest on that battle. When those urges come up, when those feelings come up, you know what to do because you've done it for so long. Just keep doing it. Don't quit because it gets easier. I know it might sound ridiculous if you're not there, but when you get there, trust me, this is you're gonna have these feelings, you're gonna have these thoughts, and you're gonna be glad you heard this message. So just to summarize, the important thing with this model really is to realize that almost every type of reaction to a person who's trying to change something can be helpful if it is applied in the correct stage and can be unhelpful if it is applied in the incorrect stage. And I think this is what trips people up, is they applied some certain intervention to a person, and maybe through sheer luck, they applied the right intervention at the right stage, and it worked really well for that person. Maybe I gave this person a strategy and they took it and things got a lot better. And I'm like, okay, that's the secret. Anytime someone's struggling with overspending, I'm going to show them my budgeting app and give them the tools they need to get it under control. Often we stumble into something that works because we just happen to apply a certain intervention to a person who was in a certain stage of change. So I knew I had this friend who was struggling with overspending, and I showed her how I do my budget, and they set up their budget, and like that got them going. That fixed the problem. You were talking to someone who was in preparation. And so that happened to be exactly what they needed. You maybe didn't realize that. You just tried this thing and it worked. And so you think, hey, I found the solution to overspending. Now, anytime someone tells me that they need help with overspending, I'm going to show them my budgeting software. But if you do that to someone who is in contemplation, they're not ready for a plan yet. They still need to decide that they're going to change. If you show that to someone who's in action, they're going to be like, yeah, like I know I'm already doing it, but I'm really insecure about if I can keep doing it. And just getting strategies doesn't help me with my confidence. The needs change at every stage. And so in order to get to the next stage, what you get has to also change. Now, of course, you cannot control the world. You cannot control other people. But remember that you can give yourself whatever other people don't give you. So if you're at a certain stage of change and you're not getting your needs met from those around you, double down inside and make sure you give yourself what you need in spades to get to the next step. As always, I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next time. Take care.